I watched the live stream of my own daughter's wedding from my living room in Harlem, sitting in my favorite beige armchair that still smelled faintly of the lavender sachets I stitched into its cushions. The ceremony was beautiful. Roses everywhere, the altar glowing golden in the late summer sun, and everyone looking their finest. Except the woman in the front row wearing my exact cornflower blue dress. Wasn't me. She even had a pale blonde bob style just like mine. The same silk gloves. The same necklace I had saved up for and worn to every graduation and formal event in our family. But she wasn't me. I felt my breath leave my lungs like someone had punched me. I leaned closer to the screen, my hands trembling against the edge of the iPad. My neighbor Marique, who had brought stripwaffles to comfort me that morning, leaned in too. "Is that her?" she asked, squinting. "No," I whispered, heart pounding. "It's someone she hired to pretend to be me." "Yes, you heard that right. My very own daughter, my only child, paid another woman to pretend to be her mother on her wedding day. And not because I was ill. Not because I was traveling. But because, in her words, she didn't want to see me. Let me say that again. My daughter didn't want me there at all. Now before you think I must have been a terrible mother or done something unforgivable, let me tell you exactly how we got here. My name is Johanna Elzinga. I'm 84 years old. I used to be a pharmacist, the kind who still hand-filled capsules and kept handwritten logs in tidy columns. I live alone in Harlem, the same house my late husband Martin built with his own 2 hands. I don't have many friends left these days, but I have stories, and a lot of love that used to fill a home. My daughter's name is Saskia. Saskia was my miracle baby. I had lost 3 before her. The doctors told me I would probably never carry one to term. But then, on a rainy Wednesday afternoon in 1979, Saskia came into this world, screaming like a lioness. She had golden hair before she even left the hospital. The nurses nicknamed her Zonastrel, Sunbeam, and for the longest time she was exactly that. We were close. Closer than close. I packed her lunches with handwritten notes. Braided her hair into intricate crowns each morning before school. Read her stories from the fairy tale books my own mother gave me. After Martin passed from pancreatic cancer, it was just me and Saskia. I gave her everything. I worked double shifts at the apotheke just to afford her violin lessons and language camps abroad. She wanted to study fashion design in Paris. I couldn't afford the tuition, but I sold Martin's vintage coin collection without a second thought. So how did it come to this? The warning signs were subtle at first. When she started dating Tobias, I noticed a change. He was charming, yes, but cold behind the eyes. The kind of man who smiled at strangers and scowled at waiters. The kind of man who always managed to find fault with everything, especially me. He once told me during a Christmas dinner, while slicing roast duck, that my generation held onto things too tightly: property, opinions, people. I laughed at the time, but something about the way Saskia looked down at her plate told me it wasn't a joke. Slowly, she visited less. Phone calls became brief, then rare, then non-existent. She got engaged a year ago and didn't even tell me directly. I found out from a woman at the cheese stall in the Saturday market who had seen the announcement in Het Parool. When I called to congratulate her, her voice was polite. Polite. Not joyful. Not emotional. Not "Mama, I can't believe it." And when I offered to help plan the wedding, she paused and said she'd get back to me. She never did. That's when the gut feeling started. But even in my worst fears, I never imagined she'd actually replace me. I didn't get an invitation. Not even an email. I found out the date and venue from my neighbor's daughter who works at the bridal shop Saskia bought her dress from. And still, I didn't want to believe it. So I called her the week before the wedding. She picked up after 5 rings. "Hello," she said, like I was a stranger. "It's me," I said gently. "Mama." Silence. I just wanted to say, I hope you have the most beautiful day. I still have your first communion veil if you'd like it for the ceremony. Her reply? I think it's best you don't come, Mama. For both our sakes. Why? I asked, my voice cracking. Another silence. Then she said, I've arranged everything. I don't want any tension. I've found someone. Found someone. To represent you. Just for the photos. It's cleaner that way. Cleaner. Like I was a stain on her wedding album. And now here I was, watching a woman I'd never met pretend to be me at my own daughter's wedding. The camera panned over to Saskia, radiant in white lace, smiling as the impostor handed her a bouquet. She kissed her on both cheeks. As if that stranger had held her through nightmares, wiped her fevered forehead, or sat beside her bed reading Thea Beckman stories by flashlight. As if that woman had sacrificed everything. I turned the iPad off and set it on the table. My hands were shaking so badly that my tea spilled onto the lace doily beneath the cup. I'm going to bed, I told Marique. But it's only 4, she whispered, clearly unsure whether to comfort or cry. I just need a moment. I walked to my bedroom and closed the door behind me, but I didn't lie down. Instead, I opened the closet, reached for the shoebox tucked behind my winter coats, and pulled out the one thing I never thought I'd need again. The envelope. The one with the documents. The ones Martin told me to never throw away, just in case. And as I sat on the edge of my bed, tears burning my cheeks, one thought kept echoing in my head. She thinks she erased me, but she has no idea what's coming next. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a stiff back, still seated on the edge of my bed. The envelope rested beside me, unopened since last night, though I had stared at it for hours, my thumb grazing the worn flap, my mind drifting through memories I had spent decades filing away like brittle leaves. This envelope wasn't just paper. It was proof of love, of sacrifice, of truth. Inside it were all the things I never told Saskia, because I never thought I had to. I pulled it open with shaking fingers. There it was, our family trust papers, the land deed to this very home, bank certificates from Martin's secret investments, and a notarized will. His last will. Martin left everything, to Saskia, yes, but with one clear stipulation. So long as she honors the woman who raised her. I blinked hard. My vision blurred. The old-style Dutch cursive danced across the yellowed page like a ghost, reminding me of who I once was, and the kind of man Martin had been. But now Saskia was dishonoring that memory. She had replaced me with a stranger, on the most sacred day of her life. And something in me, something that had long been quiet like snow, snapped. I wasn't going to chase her. But I also wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. The next day, I took the tram to Amsterdam and walked up the stone steps of Van Kooten and Dabino Terrassen. The receptionist was a young girl with red lipstick and nails too long to type easily. "Can I help you?" she asked politely. "Yes," I said. "I need to amend a clause." She smiled. "Your name?" "Johanna Elzinga." She paused. "Wait, the Elzinga Family Trust?" I nodded. "I'll get Mr. Van Kooten." Minutes later, a gentleman in a gray wool suit shook my hand, his eyes brightening with recognition. "I thought you might come in eventually," he said, gesturing me into his office. I sat down slowly. "I need you to ensure that what's mine stays protected." Martin left me with dignity. I want to make sure Saskia doesn't strip that away completely. He nodded. "You have every right. And given her choices," he hesitated politely, "you may want to review this document as well." He handed me a thick file marked Tobias Holdings. I opened it. I gasped. The man my daughter married, Tobias, had taken multiple loans in Martin's name. Some co-signed using forged documents. Is this legal? I asked, breathless. No, he replied. But it's been hidden well. Until now. I felt my throat tighten, not just because Tobias had violated my husband's legacy, but because Saskia had let him. She had to know. She must have known. But she chose him anyway. I walked out of that building not as a broken old woman, but as someone finally awake. Later that week, I was watering my hydrangeas in the front garden when a car pulled up. A sleek black BMW. The passenger door opened, and out stepped Saskia. In person. For the first time in 2 years. She didn't look like the girl who used to hold my hand at the Albert Heijn checkout line. Her face was sharper now. Her heels clicked across the sidewalk like she owned the world. Mama, she said, folding her arms. We need to talk. I didn't say anything. I just kept watering the flowers. Mama, she said again. Please. Are you going to introduce yourself? I asked calmly. She blinked. Excuse me. I only ask because you hired someone else to be me. I assumed I'd need a name tag now. She looked away, embarrassed. It wasn't meant to hurt you. It was just easier that way. Easier. She nodded. You're too old-fashioned. You don't understand my life anymore. Old-fashioned. I turned off the hose. Is that what you call the woman who raised you with her bare hands? Who worked 60-hour weeks so you could learn to sew and speak French? Mama, stop. Please. This isn't helping. What do you want, Saskia? She glanced at the car. Tobias and we're having trouble with the house. Legal trouble. Legal trouble, I repeated. Like forging signatures, taking out loans under someone else's name. Her eyes widened. You know. I stepped closer. Yes, I know everything. Her mouth opened, then shut. I didn't come here for a fight, she said softly. I came here to ask for your help. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw the little girl again. The one with scraped knees and milk mustaches. The one who used to crawl into my bed when it thundered and whisper, Mama, hold me tight. I wanted to reach for her. I wanted to forgive her. But then I remembered the fake smile of the woman in my dress. The lies. The betrayal. You came too late, I said. She looked like she'd been slapped. I loved you more than I ever loved myself, I whispered. But that day, the day you replaced me, you broke something that can't be glued back together. Mama, please. You'll get what's legally yours, I said. But nothing more. She covered her mouth, trembling. I didn't think it would go this far. I took a deep breath. You made it go this far. And then, just as I turned to go inside, she said something that made my blood run cold. Mama, you don't understand. Tobias didn't just take money. He did something worse. I froze. My hand on the doorknob. What do you mean? I asked. She stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. There's a reason he wanted me to keep you away. He had plans. With your house. With you. I turned slowly. What kind of plans, Saskia? She looked at me, and for the first time in years, her eyes were full of fear. I think he wanted to declare you mentally unfit, sell the house, move you to a facility, and I think he already started the paperwork. The wind stopped. My flowers stood still. Even the birds in the trees seemed to pause. That was when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was war. The moment I saw that her handbag was still on the hallway bench, keys inside, phone untouched, and her wallet peeking out from the top, I felt my legs give out beneath me. Saskia! I called out, Louder now, my voice shaky. Silence. I rushed to the kitchen. Empty. The back door. Still locked. I ran to the living room, the study, even the tiny guest bathroom. Nothing. Saskia. She was gone. My daughter had vanished in the few seconds I stepped outside to face Tobias, and in that moment, all the righteous fire that had been burning in me turned to cold dread. Had he taken her? Was she complicit? Had they planned this together? My mind raced with every possibility. I grabbed her phone from her bag. It was unlocked. Bless her carelessness. I checked her last text messages. There was one unread that caught my attention. Tobias, tell her what I said, and it's not just her house you'll lose. I mean it, S. The message was sent just 20 minutes ago. Suddenly, the warning she gave me before he arrived came rushing back. Mama! I think he had plans. With your house. With you. But now it seemed he had plans for her, too. I sat down, hard, my hand pressed to my chest as the panic spread through me like smoke. I'd spent my life fighting battles I thought would end with age. But here I was, 84 years old and facing war with a man who wasn't just a manipulator, but possibly dangerous. I reached for my landline and dialed the emergency number I had taped to the fridge, the private investigator Martin once used when our pharmacy's delivery van was stolen by a former employee. His name was Stjerd. Tough, discreet, and, most importantly, loyal. He picked up on the second ring. Elzinga, he said, recognizing the caller ID. I need you, I whispered. My daughter is missing. Her husband just left my doorstep and I think he took her. Stjerd didn't hesitate. Text me your address again. I'll be there in 10. True to his word, he arrived in 9 minutes flat, still in his beige trench coat, looking like he'd walked out of a detective novel. He inspected the outside of the house first, then sat down with me in the living room. I handed him Saskia's phone and showed him the message. Stjerd whistled low. This isn't just emotional abuse. This man's into something nasty. He tapped the screen. And if she's scared of him, she could be in real danger. I nodded, barely able to breathe. Please, find her. I'll start now, he said. But Johanna, listen to me. If Tobias was planning to sell your house or commit fraud, he may not work alone. Keep your doors locked. Don't talk to anyone you don't recognize. Don't worry, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've survived worse. But I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the kitchen with all the lights on, sipping lukewarm mint tea and staring at the front door. Every car that passed made my heart race. Every owl outside my window sounded like a cry for help. By morning, I looked older than I had the night before. When Stjerd called at 6:17 a.m., my hands shook so badly I dropped the phone and had to pick it up from under the table. I found her, he said. Where? I gasped. She's at a small hotel outside Hilversum. Room was paid in cash. She used a fake name, Annika Moss. The front desk said she checked in alone last night and hasn't left since. My knees buckled with relief. Can I speak to her? I tried. She wouldn't open the door. But she's alive. She looked shaken, scared. I'll wait here until she agrees to talk. I sat down, overcome with emotions I couldn't name. Relief, rage, guilt. Everything tangled together in my chest. That evening, Stjerd called again. She wants to see you, he said. She asked for you, specifically. Without hesitation, I put on my coat and grabbed my handbag. By 8:30 p.m., I stood outside a modest hotel just off a country road near Hilversum. The rain had started, soft and misty. I climbed the stairs, my legs trembling from exhaustion and emotion. Room 204. I knocked. Nothing. Then the door opened slowly, and there she was. No makeup. No earrings. Just my daughter. Saskia. She stepped back to let me in, and I entered a room that smelled faintly of fear and stale coffee. Mama, she whispered. I hugged her. Tightly. No words. Just the sound of a mother holding on to the child she almost lost. I'm sorry, she said over and over, her shoulders shaking. I know, I whispered. We sat down on the edge of the bed. She reached for her purse and pulled out a USB stick. What's that? I asked. Everything, she said. Bank statements, audio recordings, contracts Tobias tried to get me to sign. I copied it all. My eyes widened. Why? Because I'm leaving him, she said. But I can't do it alone. I took the USB with shaking hands. You're not alone, I said. She looked at me, her eyes glossy. Do you still love me? I didn't answer with words. I just pulled her into another hug. But just as I held her, grateful, tearful, there was a knock at the hotel room door. 3 knocks. Loud. Then silence. Saskia froze. My heart dropped. We both turned toward the door slowly, eyes wide. I stood up, walked to the peephole. And what I saw made my blood run cold. Tobias. Standing there. But he wasn't alone. He had 2 men with him. And one of them was holding something in his hand. A metal crowbar. I didn't move. My breath caught in my throat as I stared through the peephole. Tobias was standing just feet away, calm as ever, in a gray wool coat. But the 2 men flanking him looked nothing like lawyers or friends. One had a tattoo snaking up his neck. The other clutched a crowbar so tightly his knuckles were white. I backed away from the door. Saskia, I whispered. Pack your things. We're leaving. Now. She looked at me, stunned. What? What's wrong? I didn't answer. Instead, I slid the deadbolt across the door and flipped the safety latch. Then I pulled the dresser toward the entryway, blocking it partially. Mama? She asked again, her voice rising. It's him, I said. And he didn't come for a conversation. Saskia's face went pale. Her hands trembled as she grabbed her bag and coat. She reached for the USB on the nightstand, but I snatched it first and shoved it into my bra. The knock came again. Louder. Mama, what do we do? I turned to her, my voice low and steady. You go out the fire escape. Take your phone. Call Stirred the moment you're clear. What about you? I'll stall them. Her eyes widened in horror. No. Mama, no. You can't. You still think I'm a fragile old woman? I said, already unhooking the fire escape latch. Let me remind you who raised you. I haven't survived this long just to go down now. Another bang. This one harder. They were trying the handle now. Saskia. Go. She hesitated for one more heartbeat, then kissed my cheek, grabbed her bag, and climbed out onto the rusty metal escape ladder. I watched her descend into the rainy alley behind the hotel, her blonde hair slick with water, disappearing into the darkness. Then I turned to face the door. I took a deep breath, straightened my spine, and waited. The door shook under the pressure. I could hear Tobias's voice now, muffled but sharp. Johanna? I just want to talk. Talk. With a crowbar? I stepped closer, projecting calm. Then why don't you put your little tools down? Pause. Silence. Then, where's Saskia? She's not here, I said. Another lie. Another delay. She is, he said, voice harder now. We followed her. We know she's inside. Open the door. You think I'm stupid? I said, louder now. You brought muscle. You thought you could scare me. I laughed. Sharp and cold. You don't know who I am, Tobias. There was a pause again, and then the door handle rattled. Furiously. They were going to break in, but just before the first hit landed, sirens, blazing, loud, fast, then shouting downstairs, tires screeching, heavy boots pounding up the hallway. I stepped back as the entire corridor exploded in chaos. Police! Someone shouted. Drop it! On the ground! Within seconds, fists were banging on the hotel door again, but this time it wasn't Tobias. Police! Open up! I unlocked the door with trembling fingers. 4 uniformed officers stood outside, weapons drawn. Behind them, Tobias and the 2 men were being shoved face-first against the hallway wall. One officer stepped in. Are you Johanna Elzinga? Yes, I whispered. Your investigator called us. Said you were in danger. Good thing we got here in time. I nodded, stunned. My knees buckled slightly. He caught my elbow. Are you hurt? No, I said. Just old. And angry. He almost smiled at that. They took Tobias away in cuffs. And just before he disappeared around the corner, he turned over his shoulder and sneered. This isn't over. But I stared him down, and whispered, It is for you. By the time Saskia and I got back to Harlem, it was nearly 2 a.m. She hadn't spoken much on the train ride back, just sat there holding her knees to her chest like a child again. When we reached my home, I made her tea. Chamomile. The same one I used to brew for her after violin lessons. She held the warm mug in both hands and finally spoke. I let him change me, Mama, little by little, until I didn't recognize myself. I sat across from her, silent. I lied to you. I defended him. I hurt you more than anyone ever has. I swallowed hard. Yes, I said softly. You did. She nodded, tears streaming down her face now. I don't expect you to forgive me. I reached over, placed my wrinkled hand over hers. I already did, I whispered. She broke, sobbing like a storm. I pulled her close, rocked her gently, and we sat there in the kitchen, the light humming above us, the night silent outside, and a mother holding her broken daughter with the kind of love that survives anything. But just as I thought we had reached peace, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. The USB was a copy, not the original. I hope you enjoyed the show. T. I read it 3 times, then looked at Saskia. What is it? She asked. I couldn't bring myself to answer, because outside, across the street, a black car was parked in the shadows. And someone was still watching us. I stared at the message for what felt like hours. The USB was a copy, not the original. I hope you enjoyed the show. T. My hand trembled, but I didn't say a word. I just stood up slowly and walked over to the window, careful not to draw the curtains too far. Across the street, the black car sat motionless beneath the street lamp. The windshield reflected the orange glow of the lamppost, but I could see the shape of a person inside. Watching. Waiting. Mama. Saskia whispered from behind me. What's wrong? I turned slowly and forced a tight smile. Nothing. Just some junk message. Probably spam. She didn't believe me, but she didn't press either. Her eyes were red from crying, and her voice was hollow from everything she'd been through. She looked like someone who had been running for far too long. I made up the guest bed for her in the spare room and locked every door and window in the house before crawling into my own. But I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Martin's voice in my head. If you ever sense you're being hunted, don't hide. Set the trap. He used to say that when we caught rats sneaking into the pantry during the winter. But now the words had never felt more urgent or real. By dawn, I had a plan. I dressed in my thick wool coat and pulled my scarf tight around my neck. The car was still there when I stepped out onto the cobbled street, my cane tapping steadily against the stones. But I didn't look in its direction. I walked to the tram and boarded like it was any other day, heading toward the notary's office. But instead of going inside, I slipped around the back, through the alley entrance where the cleaners usually came in. Inside the staff break room, Stjerd was already waiting for me. I placed the USB on the table between us. It was a fake, I said quietly. Tobias sent a message last night. He still has the real one. Stjerd didn't flinch. I thought so. His face was too calm in the holding cell, like he wanted us to feel victorious. So now what? I asked. He leaned forward. We flip it. Make him think the copy was the real one. Use that to draw him out. I shook my head. I don't want to draw him out. I want to bury him. Legally. Permanently. Stjerd smiled. Then we'll need more than a USB. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were printed photos, grainy images of Tobias meeting with men in alleyways, exchanging briefcases, entering bank offices under different names. He's not just stealing from you, Stjerd said. He's laundering money. Lots of it. I felt the wind leave my lungs. Can we prove it? I asked. Not yet. But if we let him believe you've dropped everything, that you're too old and too tired to keep fighting, he'll make mistakes. I looked him dead in the eye. Then let's make me look weak. That evening, Saskia and I staged an argument. Loud. Painful. Right on the front porch. Curtains wide open for whoever might be watching. You don't trust me, she yelled for the whole neighborhood to hear. You lied for years. I shouted back. She threw her coat on dramatically and stormed down the street. I slammed the door and even locked it for effect. But inside, we were both smiling. Because while Tobias thought we were falling apart again, Saskia was already in Stjerd's car, headed to her old apartment in Amsterdam to retrieve every document, every hidden recording, and every file she had once been too afraid to collect. Meanwhile, I prepared my home. I installed new security cameras, called my old friend Peter from the neighborhood watch, and made sure that if Tobias tried anything again, there'd be footage. Witnesses. Proof. Days passed. Then a week. And then nothing. No texts. No messages. No sign of the black car. It was as if he'd vanished. Until one morning, I received an envelope in my mailbox. No stamp. Just slipped in by hand. I opened it with gloved fingers, expecting another threat. But it wasn't. It was a wedding photo. From Saskia's wedding. But not one I had ever seen before. In the photo, Tobias stood beside the woman he had hired to pretend to be me. Only, in this version, the woman's face had been crossed out, with red ink. And beneath it, written in the same red pen, "Wrong woman." I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned it over. There was a short message on the back. You should have stayed gone, Johanna. I walked back into the house, locked the door, and sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, the photo lying in front of me like a warning shot. He was back. And this time, he wasn't hiding behind forged signatures or hired muscle. He was coming for me. That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did Saskia. We stayed up mapping every step, every call, every document we had left to gather. Because the only way to end this was to bring him into the light. So we set the final trap. Saskia called him from a burner phone the next day, pretending to panic. Tobias, she said, voice shaking. She found everything. She's going to the police tomorrow. She paused, then added, But I can stop her. Meet me tonight. Same place we used to go when we needed to talk. He bit. Of course he did. The trap was set for 8 p.m. that evening, and at precisely 8:02 p.m., Tobias walked into the old canal-side cafe where they once shared glasses of white wine and charcuterie boards. Only this time, Saskia wasn't there alone. She was sitting with Stjerd, and the two undercover officers waiting to arrest him. But as they stood to greet him, Tobias bolted. Out the side door, across the bridge, down the alley, gone, vanished. By the time the officers reached the corner, all they found was a phone, smashed on the pavement, and a small square of paper folded in half. Stjerd opened it carefully. Inside was a single sentence. "You're not playing with an amateur. This isn't over." And in that moment, we realized Tobias had always been 2 steps ahead. And now he was loose, desperate, and dangerous. The air in Harlem felt different after that night. He wasn't just a man anymore. He was a shadow. Tobias had slipped out of the officer's grasp like smoke, and now he was everywhere and nowhere all at once. Watching, waiting, planning. I changed my locks again. Twice. Saskia stayed with me full-time now, barely leaving the house. We kept the curtains drawn, took different routes when we needed groceries, and never answered calls unless the name was saved. But fear can only hold you hostage for so long before it starts to turn into something else. Resolve. "I want to finish this," I told Stjerd over coffee one morning. "I'm not going to wait for him to knock again." Stjerd, always calm, gave a slow nod. "Then we need to hit where it hurts. His money, his reputation, his power." It turns out Tobias had built a network of offshore accounts, shell companies, and fake clients. But he'd been clever. None of the businesses had his name directly attached. Just initials. Fake identities. That was, until Saskia remembered something. "The wedding planner," she said suddenly one night, sitting upright on the couch. "He insisted we hire someone, said it was a gift from his cousin abroad. But I never met the guy. I only spoke to him once on the phone." "Do you remember the name?" I asked. She hesitated. It was strange. I remember laughing about it once. Something like Dirk Levenhart, or maybe David Hartveld. Stjerd perked up. Dirk Levenhart is an alias. One that came up in another fraud case in Utrecht last year, but the suspect fled. My heart skipped. "He's using the same name again?" I asked. Stjerd stood up, already dialing. "If we can link this alias to one of the companies Tobias funnels money through, we can drag him out." Within 48 hours, Stjerd had traced the alias to an event planning company operating out of a co-working space in Rotterdam. When he visited the address, the receptionist handed him a card. The name on it, DLH Consults. Just 3 initials. Tobias's fake business. A shell. But it was enough. Stjerd called in a contact at the Financial Crimes Unit. Quietly, cautiously, they began investigating. Bank records were pulled. Surveillance was requested. A warrant was signed, sealed and ready. But there was one problem. Tobias had gone completely off the grid. No credit card use. No phone records. No registered car rentals. No known associates. He was a ghost again. Until the letter arrived. Another envelope. This time tucked under the flower pot outside my front door. Inside it was a photograph. Me. Taken from behind. I was walking in the Albert Heijn grocery aisle, pushing my trolley, picking out apples. It was from 2 days ago. I hadn't seen anyone. There was no note, no handwriting, no name. Just a photo. And on the back, scrawled in red pen again, one word. Soon. I stood frozen, the edges of the photograph trembling in my grip. Saskia came up behind me and saw it. She didn't scream. She just said, "We can't live like this anymore." "I know," I whispered. We called Stjerd, and within the hour, a full team of detectives met us in our living room. They set up motion-triggered cameras. One was placed near the gate, one above the mailbox, one behind the kitchen window. They advised me to carry an emergency button. I pinned it to the inside of my blouse. But even then, every creak in the house, every gust of wind, made my heart skip. One night, I found myself pacing the hallway at 3 a.m., unable to sleep. Then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. Not from the front. From the back of the house. I crept toward the patio door. My hands trembled. Tap, tap. I grabbed the flashlight from the drawer and flicked it on. Swung open the curtains. And there he was. Tobias. Standing in my garden. Alone. No weapon. Just a twisted smile. I didn't open the door. I pressed the emergency button. He didn't move. He just watched me, as if studying me. And then he held something up, a flash drive, and mouthed the words, "The real one." Then he turned and ran. The officers arrived 5 minutes later, but he was already gone again. But now we knew he was still holding the original data, the real USB, the final piece. That's when I made the decision. If he wants to hand-deliver threats, I told Stjerd, let's make it public. We scheduled a press conference. A bold move, especially for someone like me who prefers teapots to TV cameras. But enough was enough. With Stjerd at my side and Saskia just off stage, I stood in front of a dozen reporters from local and national news. "My name is Johanna Elzinga," I began. "I am 84 years old. I was once a mother, a wife, and a pharmacist. And today, I am a survivor of domestic financial abuse." Gasps. Cameras flashed. I told them everything, about the fake mother at the wedding, the forgery, the shell companies, the threats. I held up the photo Tobias had left me. I called him out by name. And when I looked into the lens, I said directly, "Tobias, if you're watching, and I know you are, you should know, the more you hide, the more we'll shine light. And when we find you, you won't just be punished for your crimes. You'll be exposed for the coward you are." That night, the clip went viral. Across Dutch media. Even on international news. The comments flooded in, support, stories, people who had lived through the same nightmare. Survivors. Fighters. And then, something incredible happened. An anonymous tip came in. A woman in Antwerp. She'd once dated a man named David Hartveld. He'd drained her accounts, then vanished. She still had an old laptop he left behind. She sent it to the authorities. Inside, encrypted files. Stjerd's team cracked them within 48 hours. And there it was. The real USB data. Every transaction. Every fake identity. Every illegal transfer. All linked back to Tobias. A full case. Enough to destroy him. Forever. We turned the files in. Interpol got involved. An arrest warrant was issued across 3 countries. But the victory didn't feel real until I received the call. One foggy morning, as I stirred sugar into my tea, my phone rang. "Johanna Elzinga?" a voice asked. "Yes. This is Inspector Van Loon, Belgium Division. We have him. Tobias van Meerten. He tried crossing the border on foot near Turnhout." My hands flew to my mouth. "He's in custody. For good." I didn't cry. I just closed my eyes. And finally breathed. But even in that quiet moment I knew, justice is never the end. It's just the beginning of healing. The sky over Harlem was a soft gray the morning they confirmed Tobias had been extradited. Rain misted gently over the rooftops, and the tulips in my garden swayed like they knew, somehow, that the storm had finally passed. But peace doesn't return all at once. It drips back into your life slowly, one breath at a time. He was in custody now, yes, facing charges in both the Netherlands and Belgium: fraud, identity theft, financial manipulation, and attempted coercive control. But for me, for Saskia, the healing was just beginning. We sat side by side in my tiny kitchen that morning, the radio playing softly in the background as the news broke. Interpol confirms that Dutch national Tobias van Meerten was captured at the Belgian border late last night. Saskia turned off the radio and exhaled deeply. "I keep expecting to wake up and find out he slipped away again," she whispered. I reached for her hand. "He didn't. He's gone. But the damage isn't." She was right. There were still loans tied to her name, creditors to deal with, lawyers, apologies to send to people who'd been manipulated on her behalf. And most of all, there was the pain, the shame, and for me, the deep ache of nearly losing my child to someone so monstrous. "I let him turn me into someone else," she said, her voice small. "Someone I never wanted to be." I cupped her face, my thumb brushing the edge of her cheekbone. "No. He tried to turn you into someone else," I corrected. "But you found your way back." Her eyes glistened. "Do you still see me as your daughter?" I didn't answer with words. I wrapped my arms around her, pulled her close, and held her with all the strength I had left in my bones. "Yes," I whispered into her hair. "Always." In the weeks that followed, the headlines shifted. Other scandals. Other arrests. But for our little world, the dust was only just settling. The court froze all of Tobias's known assets. Saskia filed for divorce, with Sturd's team ensuring every clause in the prenup was enforced. She came out with nothing of his. No money. But also no debt. And most importantly, no chains. The wedding company he created under the alias DLH Consults was shut down. Every bride who'd unknowingly worked with it was refunded through a special victims fund. And that strange woman he'd hired to play me at the wedding? Her real name was Marit van Aken. She came forward voluntarily once she saw the press conference. Turns out, she had no idea what she was participating in. She thought it was an acting gig. Paid cash, no questions asked. She even came to my home one afternoon to apologize. I opened the door, and there she stood, tall, blonde, and trembling. "I didn't know," she said. "He told me it was a performance piece for an art project. Said the mother was ill and didn't want to be in photos." She handed me an envelope and left without asking for tea or forgiveness. Inside was every euro he had paid her, with a note, for the real mother. I kept it. Not the money. The note. Framed it, actually, as a reminder that even in lies, some people try to make things right. A few months later, something strange happened. I was invited to speak at a university. They were hosting a seminar on elder abuse and financial manipulation. Someone on the faculty had seen my interview on national TV. They asked if I would share my story, not just the facts, but the feelings. At first, I said no. Who wants to hear from a shaky old woman with a teacup voice and a past that rattles like bones in a drawer? But Saskia insisted. "Mama," she said, "you've saved more than just me. People need to hear from someone who didn't let age be a cage." So I went. I wore my navy blue coat, the one Martin loved. I put on my pearl earrings. And I told a room of young people, law students, nurses, social workers, what it means to be erased, to be pushed aside, and what it feels like to rise anyway. I told them how my daughter replaced me at her wedding with a stranger, how I almost lost everything, and how I fought back. When I was done, there was a standing ovation. Afterward, a young man, maybe 19 or 20, approached me with tears in his eyes. My Oma is going through something similar, he said. But we didn't know how to help. Now we do. And just like that, I realized something. Maybe I wasn't just a victim. Maybe I was a vessel. A voice. A beginning. Not an end. Back in Harlem, the garden bloomed stronger than ever that spring. Saskia started therapy. I started writing. Just short entries at first. Then letters. Then a small blog, Letters from Oma, where I told stories, shared lessons, and spoke directly to women who had been made to feel small. One evening, months after the trial, as the air turned sweet with summer, Saskia joined me on the porch. She handed me a tiny box. I opened it. Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a tiny charm, an oak leaf. For strength, she said. And roots, I added. She nodded. We sat there for a long time, just rocking gently in our chairs, the world finally still. Until a letter arrived. This time, not slipped under a flower pot, but through the official post. It was addressed to me. From Tobias. From prison. Saskia froze when I opened it. There were only 5 words, scrawled in that same, neat handwriting. This is not the end. I held the letter over the candle and watched it burn. Then I looked out at the garden, took Saskia's hand, and whispered, "No, it's the beginning." Speech balloon. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in the strength of mothers and second chances, please like, comment, and subscribe. There are more stories to tell. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your voice. Speech balloon.